All right, this week we're going to finish reading chapter 11, and you'll see that there's a PDF file here that has the slides for chapter 11, and you should move over to chapter 12, where we start talking about the cost of capital. And you're going to wrap up the risk and return material in chapter 11, and then you're going to start looking at the cost of capital material in chapter 12. Again, here's a PDF file that contains the slides for that. Please note that I have an Excel workbook here. I made an Excel workbook. This Excel workbook has worksheets that pair with the slides for chapter 12, and it'll help you sort of walk through the material that's presented in chapter 12. In addition to that, I have curated a set of problems, review problems for chapter 12, along with the answers, I should note. And this will give you an idea of what sort of questions you should be able to answer if you have a good control over this material. Now, this is a very short little summary review item from the end of the chapter. Here's a more extensive set of problems that I've put together that help you understand how a firm goes about determining its cost of capital and the various elements that go into that. When we're determining cost of capital, we're really doing three things. We're determining the cost of equity, we're determining the cost of preferred stock if there is preferred stock, so common stock, preferred stock, and we're also determining the cost of debt. This is where we need to understand that the material we use in this course is cumulative. You will recall from your Finance 3100 course that you had learned how to use the Gordon dividend model as one way to come up with the return on equity numbers back in chapter 7. So we're going to use that material. In addition, you've learned about the capital assets pricing model, which is another method for determining the appropriate return on equity. So we're going to use both of those techniques together. You also remember from chapter 6 that we learned how to value perpetuities. Well, when we're valuing preferred stock, it is a perpetuity. So we're going to use that information that we got from chapter 6 and chapter 7. And last but not least, we're going to use the information we got from chapter 6 on how we determine the yield to maturity on bonds, how we use the yield to maturity on bonds, which is essentially going to be the required rate of return for debt. That's going to be the pre-tax required rate of return for debt. In chapter 12, we introduced the idea that we're interested in the after-tax cost of debt. To determine the after-tax cost of debt, you have to determine the yield to maturity first, then multiply that yield to maturity by 1 minus the tax rate to come up with the after-tax cost of debt. In chapter 12, we're going to put together all of these techniques, most of which we learned before, to ultimately figure out how to come up with the cost of capital. This is all here in Module 9. So that is the work plan for this week. And happy studying.